was this overwhelming for you? How did you balance this independency? And if you have any specific anecdotes too, feel free to share them. So I guess we can start off with Miloni and Aisha.
I think for me, like, as I was going through college, I would slowly start to become, I guess, more independent in the sense that I would cook more, I would try to take care of more of my own finances and things like that that would, I guess, intimidate you when you were, like, starting out. Um, and I think that, uh, for me, like, when I graduated college, it just kinda got to the point where I was comfortable doing a lot of those things already, where I felt like I was ready to do them, so I didn't necessarily like, now after graduation, I didn't necessarily have that period where I was like, "Oh, I have to do this," or "I'm intimidated by this." But I think that something that really helped me was just the idea that whatever like, there isn't anything actually stopping you from trying these things, like, whether it be, like, a new hobby or, like, learning how to cook or learning how to manage your finances or to even make new friends. Like, it can be a very intimidating situation, but a lot of it is just, I guess, sort of sitting down and talking to yourself, at least that's what I do a lot of, where I just sort of ask myself why I find it intimidating or why, like, what exactly is stopping me from learning something new or trying something new. And in the end, the answer is generally just yourself. Like, it will be that maybe you thought that you couldn't, or that you think that people might think it's weird. But I guess at the end of the day, for me, like when, like for example, in quarantine, in college, I used to make a lot of very bland, tasteless food. So in quarantine, I like decided that I would actually try to make dishes that I genuinely enjoyed, even though I didn't think I was that good at cooking, or I didn't like, I guess I just didn't know if I could do it. But then I sort of got into, like, watching videos of people making food and trying new recipes, and then I liked the stuff that I made so much that I actually decided to, like, go vegan, which was something that I was not sure I could do before. So I think that in terms of, like, even reaching out to new people or trying new things, telling yourself that you can is a really huge thing. Like, I think that it's really important to be your own cheerleader, and that sounds really cliche, but I feel like it's true. And I guess also in terms of making friends, I think eventually when you do like, this is what Preeti was saying earlier, but when you do talk to people, you will find that will have something in common with them, or you'll find something about them that you find interesting enough to sort of continue a genuine connection. So I think that the first step is always the hardest, the first step, which is reaching out. But if it makes you feel better, I'm sure that there are plenty of people who are in the same boat as you who also want to reach out to you but are intimidated. And I think that a lot of people say, "Oh, well, yeah, I guess, sure." Like they don't really believe it. But that happened to me where like especially in like the first month of my grad program, I would text my friends and talk about how I don't have any friends in my program and how I really want to reach out to people, but I don't know how to do it. And so eventually someone actually reached out to me and she told me that, she was intimidated by reaching out to people, but she was also in the same boat. And we sort of became friends that way. So I think that it is, it does feel a little ridiculous when people tell you that, but there are like people in the same boat as you. And everyone wants to reach out to people and try new things. So I think that like, maybe try not to hold yourself back.
Yeah, in terms of independency, I think financial independency was definitely a newfound thing. Like, you no longer have to depend on your parents for allowance every month or on like a part time job in college. Um, and so for me, I became very interested in like how do I want to go about managing my money, right? Like, um, if I want to, let's say, invest in a property when I'm at the age of like 25, how do I set myself up to do that? And how do I manage my 401k? How do I do all these adult things, right? Um, and so I became very interested in like managing my money and investing in stocks and things like that. And actually at work, I made connections with people just because we would talk about stocks or we would talk about investing or whatever. So in terms of financial independence, there was that. In terms of other independence, yeah, it's nice. Like you're no longer sitting in, some classes that are required for graduation, but you're not really interested in, right? So now you can kind of craft what you're interested in. Like at work, what do you want to work on? Like whatever you want to work on, you can. There's no one mandating that you can only do certain things, right? Like if you have new ideas, you can bring them up, you can work on them. And so I think in terms of intellectual curiosity, that was also very cool to see that, like, if I found issues in our existing system, I could take that up and propose solutions and things like that. So essentially it became interesting because it was more of what I want to do versus what is set out for me to do. What else? In terms of, I guess, it was also interesting because in college, like Miloni was saying, you become very independent in terms of doing things for yourself and making decisions for yourself and stuff like that. And so when you move back home, obviously it's a little bit different because the last time your parents saw you was when you were, or the last time you lived at home was when you were in high school, right? And so they still view you as like a child or whatever it may be. And I know a lot of people face this, but so that was definitely a change. I recently moved to San Francisco, so there's that. But I think like there was a little bit of adjustment in understanding that they may not have realized certain things that you think you can do independently that they still feel like you can't or whatever. But yeah, I think like at least being able to live at home also came with being able to see your parents every day or your siblings every day, which was super nice. And that was something I really cherished a lot. But yeah, so those are some of the changes that I noticed for sure.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I think these are all very good points and very valuable. And I wanted to elaborate a little bit on sometimes when you go into a work environment, there are lots of different kinds of people. And, sometimes they'll frown, they'll do something, even whether it's going to grad school or, whenever you go into a different environment, we tend to be very sensitive. So we're watching out for signs. Do they like me? Do they, am I doing the right thing? And that can also cause a lot of, confusion. So it's always good to validate if you're thinking, don't take anything personally. If somebody's frowning, maybe they just have a stomach ache, just don't assume that it's because of what you said. If you have to tell yourself a story, tell a good one, right? If you don't know, or just validate it. Because sometimes if you feel at work, sometimes you might find that a certain person in certain meetings or all meetings sort of has a harsh interaction with you. And then you might start forming this opinion about, maybe I'm wrong, what is going on? So either validate the story you're telling yourself, you can always go up to them, be vulnerable, which is a little hard to do initially, but once you do it, once you put it out there, then you'll see how much people will receive you and you will not stay confused for too long. You can just say, hey, I'm a little confused. I thought I had suggested something and you didn't seem to like it. You don't have to say it in front of everyone, but just go to them personally or set up a meeting with them. So try to get these little things out of your way quickly. Even if it's with a professor or a teacher, sometimes you feel like, oh, they don't like me, they're not grading for whatever reason. So before you tell yourself a story and start getting caught up in your own story, just make sure it's a true story. Otherwise, if you don't have the option, then tell a nice story, right? I used to have, when I was in grad school, I had to teach a class and there was this girl who used to come and sit in the front row, and it was in very early morning, like 7:30 or 8:30 in the morning, there was a class, and she would sit right in the front row. And then she'd be sitting and rolling her eyes all the time. And I was very new. I had come from India and I was a little nervous trying to teach. And I was like, why, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? But I still cared for her. So at one point, and then she ended up getting, like, she was getting a bad grade in the class. So I called her for office hours and I said, what happened? You're sitting right in front of the class and what's going on? She says, oh no, you know what happens? I couldn't take any other class. I had to take this early class and I've been so sleepy. I'm just trying not to fall asleep in that class, but I really want to do well in this class. So then I realized, that, so as I was first thinking, oh, my class must be boring, then I decided to say, well, I don't know what she's thinking. So maybe she just has defective eyes or something. I just made up a story that was a fun story for me. So every time I saw her rolling her eyes, I would just smile and not get upset or concerned that, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong. So I'm just saying that, just try to see the situation and see how you can, if you can confront it or, deal with it directly, that's the best possible way, be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm confused. I think you're not liking this or you feel like that. And let that person tell you the truth. Or if you cannot do it, then if you have to tell yourself a story, tell a good one so you can enjoy life. And also not taking things personally, because especially at work, I mean, we're used to that. You get a grade in school, but at work, it's very different. People will not tell you directly, you have to wait for this evaluation. It's like sometimes it's a 3 month or a 6 month time frame. And in school, you sort of know what will get you a good, you sort of have figured it out. At some point, it's very predictable, but at work, it's very different. It doesn't have to be your vocation. It doesn't have to be your job, right? Make it a hobby, because it's good to have your passion, because that's what gives you energy to keep going. But many people get confused that I have to have my passion and my job has to be passion. Sometimes it cannot be. Sometimes your passion may not pay enough to live the lifestyle that you want. So you may sometimes end up, maybe it's your first job, maybe you'll find a better job later, but sometimes you just have to work, to stand on your own feet and get ahead and do something that, and if you work well enough, if you take a lot of interest, you will find anything interesting, right? Whatever you resist will have a power over you, but whatever you accept and go along with will have no power over you. And so just play that out and also think about that. So, try to find some hobbies that keep your energy up and don't just make it one thing. So if you're in grad school or whatever it is you are doing, it shouldn't be just work, right? Find time to exercise, find time to do other things as well. At least have one other hobby or a passion that you spend time on, even on weekends or something, and schedule that in. Don't say, oh, I don't have time for this, because then you'll start losing energy, you'll start losing motivation, and you'll have a hard time.